The spoon barely kissed the tile. The boy everyone called deaf turned his head, and my mouth moved before my brain could catch it. No way he heard that. The Whitmore kitchen went church quiet. Finn stood there with his stuffed otter pressed to his ribs, eyes bright, like he'd been caught singing, and I whispered his name as soft as I could. Finn, sweet boy. Can you hear me? He blinked slow like someone walking out of a cave, and then the heels hit the marble like a warning bell. Celeste in diamonds and control smiling with her lips, but not her eyes. What did you just say, Ray? I told her what I'd seen, that tiny turn toward sound, the blender that made him hide the thunder, that made him shake my humming, that set his eyes blinking in rhythm, and she stepped so close I could see my own shock in her pupils. Lower your voice, stop saying his name like you own it. And then she slapped me clean and ringing. Yeah, that happened. Marcus showed up halfway through the Echo Billionaire calm, and all that power in a suit. And he did the thing men do when it's easier to believe the person who sounds nice than the person who's right, Ray. You were hired for routines, not diagnoses, and Celeste, crouched to Finn, signed slow for the room. Do you hear her, sweetheart? Then said, for the gallery. You can answer, honey, and he shook his head. Because fear trains kids faster than any school, the staff chuckled. My face burned, and I swallowed the rest of my words, because arguing with a room that already picked its story is like yelling at the tide to turn back. That night, in my little room at the end of the service hall, I lined up memories like pill bottles, the mixer, the thunder, the humming, and the picture that wouldn't leave me alone, Celeste, stirring his morning juice with a tiny silver spoon, a bottle with the label scratched down to nothing. Berry booster, my foot. And that was the moment I chose a road that gets you fired or followed, or both. I was done being the kind of quiet that keeps kids small. I went to Hector the next morning. Folks called him the gardener, but he kept the whole estate alive: lawns, cameras, fences, secrets. He had eyes trained on the stuff other people pretend not to see. I showed him the bottle I pulled from recycling. No brand, no dosage, just blank where the truth should be. You're poking a leopard, he said, and I shrugged because I already had so. We fixed a couple of conveniently broken cameras, pointed one at the pantry, and one down the service hall, tucked the feed to a hidden drive in the shed. It didn't take long. We caught Celeste on her knees at Finn's level with that pageant smile. If you answer to anyone but me, I'll make sure your father sends you somewhere. You can't see the sky, do you understand? And I kept my stomach where it belonged. With pure will, we mailed the berry booster to a lab. Hector trusted, chain of custody, tight as a drum. Results came back bright as a siren. Sedatives, not vitamins, not a mistake, intent. And Hector had a voicemail from Dr. Klein, who'd grown a conscience just in time. I wrote what you wanted, Celeste. I can't keep this on my license. Don't call me again. We waited for our day. It came tied in balloons and gardenias. Finn's 5th birthday, the ballroom reflecting chandeliers like a pond. The quartet easing into You Are My Sunshine, and something in that boy rose like the tide. He smiled, he clapped off, beat and perfect. He pointed at the speakers with a laugh so bright, the room turned to look no cue, no prompt, just joy, and I stepped forward with Hector at my shoulder and said, steady. He's not deaf, he never was, and I can prove it. Celeste tried to laugh it off, so inappropriate. Ray and I said, so is drugging a child. Hector laid the folder like a winning hand lab report, timestamps the memory card. Security hit play. The room watched her threaten a 5-year-old in 1080p. They watched her stir his drink. They heard the doctor's voice wobble. Even rich people go quiet when truth is that loud. Marcus's face cracked. Tell me this isn't real, he asked her. And for 1 second she weighed another lie, then rolled her eyes like we bored her. He's not mine. I was done being haunted by your first wife through a boy who's going to inherit everything I did, what I had to, and the officers we'd asked to wait in the side room finished their coffee and walked her out while she threw words at our backs, small, jealous nothing. You'd think that would be the end villain in cuffs. Father wakes up. Staff keeps my name out their mouths. But winning in a house like that is just a door to a new fight. The letters started. No return address. You can't protect him forever. Cars idled outside the north gate. A call to the landline with a woman's breath and a promise. You think you won, and Marcus knocked on my door late, with a voice that finally sounded like a dad. I owe you an apology. I didn't believe you. Because looking where you pointed would have meant admitting I left my son in a room with a wolf and called it family. Why didn't you quit? And I told him about the pediatric unit I used to work in. How there's a quiet that's empty, and a quiet packed full of fear. Finn had the second kind. I promised myself I wouldn't let fear turn into a home. He said he'd pay for me to go back to school if I stayed, not as help, not as background, as caretaker and advocate with the authority to be loud in doctor rooms and boardrooms. And I said yes, because the boy needed safety stamped on the walls, not whispered behind doors. Therapy with Dr. Patel felt like watching a seed push the first green through dirt. Block taps, a picture card with a dog. Finn looked at me like my face was a life jacket. You got this. Captain, I said, and he whispered. Dog so soft it felt like a moth landed in my hands. Marcus cried the kind of cry you don't show shareholders. We held a staff meeting in the Great Hall. From now on, if Ray says it, you heard it from me, he told them. Some faces soured like milk. Some breathed out for the first time in months. But shadows don't starve easy. A junior maid slid a note under Finn's pillow that read, You can't protect him at night. Hector caught her, and she spilled the deal. Celeste promised to pay her brother's debt. If she passed info and planted fear, the police took her, and the walls moved closer to feeling like a house again. We tried the park because safety isn't only fences, it's fathers who show up. Finn kicked a soccer ball with a little girl who asked nicely and laughed like the world might be okay. And that night, an envelope landed with a photo of him holding a balloon, his face circled in red. You cannot protect what the world already sees. Marcus wanted to move him to another property, I said. Hiding is what her power counts on. We have to show him the world without teaching him to be scared of it. You know what I mean? And he looked like he didn't know whether to hug me or fire me. We picked the hug. After the second car circled, and a fire in the east wing died under a black rain from the hoses, we went public, the atrium at Whitmore Industries, cameras, like a field of eyes. Marcus laid out the money trail, the bribes, the forged prescriptions, the sedatives, the whole rotten network. My son wasn't born to be quiet. He was trained to be, he said. And people love a redemption arc until a man near the back yelled, The boy doesn't belong, and lunged. Security folded him like a towel. Finn shook. I put my hands on his cheeks. Look at me. You're safe, say it. He said, safe, and we went home to a gate with a broken lock and a sky thinking about rain. Hector's friend with the feds picked up the fixer running Celeste's money through shell companies with names that sounded like vitamins. Accounts froze, allies scattered. She went from County Orange to State Gray to Solitary, where her voice echo couldn't reach our walls. We hosted a day on the lawn for kids from a local clinic. Ice cream, noisemakers. Finn stood beside his father under a banner that read, Every child deserves to be heard, and yelled. No more silence, and men who signed big checks clapped like they were remembering something they forgot. Somewhere in there, I got a thin white envelope that said, The program I'd left behind would take me back, I told Finn, with my voice steady and my heart shaking. Not forever, I'll be here and sometimes away, but you won't lose me, he wrote in his notebook. Brave like you and I told him, brave like us, and yeah. An appeal landed from her attorney because even from a cell, she wants to make noise. Marcus burned it in the fireplace and still stared at the ash like it might spell something. But the house smells like soap again. Guards walk, but they don't tense like coiled wire. Finn still startles, sometimes, then remembers our practice, hands on knees, deep breath, name 3 colors, say 1 word out loud. He usually chooses safe, and every time he does something in me chooses it too. The day I packed to start classes again, the staff gathered with paper cups of lemonade by the fountain. Hector hugged me like a cousin. Marcus shook my hand like a promise until it turned into a hug, because some endings ask for more than manners. Finn wrapped his arms around my waist and whispered, "Come back, always, Captain," I said. And he stepped back all serious and said, "We win." And I looked at that big house that tried to be a fortress and learned how to be a home, at a man who learned the difference between control and protection, at a boy who learned to say his name like a declaration. And I climbed into the car with a heart heavy and light at the same time. So let me ask you, would you have kept it quiet for safety or dragged it into the light like we did? Was I reckless or right? Where do you draw the line between protecting a child and putting a target on a family? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me what you've seen. Who believed you? Who didn't? And whether justice in a world like ours looks like silence, or the kind of truth that makes a room stop and listen.